Hello, I'm Fatima Zahra Abir, PhD student in a thesis in co-title between the University of Limoges and the University Qadi Ayad of Marrakesh. I present you this research work on element synthesis by chemical routes and the role of iron. In this presentation, I will introduce project background, raw materials and methods used in this synthesis, the main results of this work, and conclusion. The cement industry continues to look for less pollution and alternative binds to Portland clinkers. Calcium sulfoaluminate cement represents one alternative. This binds presents the advantages like reduction of CO2 emissions and energy saving when compared to Portland cement, because the Centurion temperature of calcium sulfoaluminate cement is in range of 1250 to 1350 degree, which means 100 up to 200 degree lower compared to Portland cement. At the end of this slide, we presented the cement notation of the elements. Calcium sulfoaluminate cement contains several cementitious phases like element, which represent the characteristic and main phase of this cement, as they are produced from raw materials such as gypsum, limestone, and bauxite. The latter is very rich in iron, which can influence the formation of clinker phases. In our work, we are interested in the synthesis of elements, which represents the main phase of calcium sulfoaluminate cements. In chemical synthesis, the salts were used as starting materials and mixed in stoichiometric amounts corresponding to elements. Aluminium sulfate was used as a source of sulfur. Aluminium nitrite was used as a source of alumina. Aluminium nitrite as a source of calcium, and iron nitrite source of iron. In this slide, we present flow diagram showing the steps of the chemical synthesis of element phase. The different salts were homogenized in distilled water, with stirring until total dissolution of the salts. The protocol continued with the dissolution of 5% of polyvinyl alcohol, PVA, in distilled water. The mixture of salts and PVA was heated to 100 degrees, and as the water evaporated, the viscosity of the solution increased and gel was formed. This gelation step lasted 8 hours. Then a drying step at 150 degrees was performed, and finally a calcination of the gel at 400 degrees. In this slide, we present the photos of the chemically synthesized sample at different stages. Homogenization of salts with PVA, beginning of viscous gel formation, then gel after drying, and powder after calcination. Different samples of element were prepared by chemical routes. Sample S0 is without iron. S1 contains 1% of iron, and so on. S21 is the sample that contains more iron, 21%, and X represents the number of moles of substitution of aluminium oxide by iron oxide. Now we present a thermal analysis. The thermal behavior of the samples was studied by differential thermal analysis, DTA, and thermal gravimetric analysis, TGA, to identify thermal phenomena during sintering. The figure on the left shows the DTA and TGA covers of the sample's raw mixtures, and the figure on the right presents a typical mass spectrometry curve. And all mixtures have the same thermal behavior. The thermal events can be divided into 5 stages according to the temperature ranges. The endothermic effect between 100 degree and 200 degree accompanied with a weight loss correspond to the loss of water. The second stage occurs between 400 and 600 degree. It corresponds to the partial dehydration of PVA and its transformation into polyene, as suggested by the endothermic event accompanied with mass loss. The exothermic peak at 800 degree with mass loss and release of CO2 gas is due to a combustion of residual carbon. Between 950 degree and 1100 degree, a small exothermic peak appeared with no mass loss, which could be attributed to Yellamette crystal formation. Above 1200 degree, a release of SO2 gas is detected with a slight loss of mass that could be associated with the release of sulfur that remains in the mixture and is not associated with Yellamette. Now we will present the result of the structure analysis of the phases by XRD and Rietveld analysis. This figure corresponds to the diffractogram of samples S0, S1, S2.5, S5, S10 and S21 prepared by chemical synthesis route and treated at 1250 degree for 1 hour. Yellamette represents the major phase in all samples. Crotite is present in sample S0 and S1 as a minor phase, and the ferritic phase appears from sample S2.5. In the sample S0 without iron, the main phase is the orthorhombic Yellamette only. Yellamette composed of both orthorhombic and cubic phases in samples S1, S2.5, S5 and S10. From an addition of 1% of iron oxide, the cubic polymorph is detected at the expense of the orthorhombic polymorph of Yellamette. This shows the effect of iron and the change of the crystal structure of Yellamette. Iron stabilizes cubic variety, and with the increase of its content in the samples, the amount of the cubic variety also increases. When the iron concentration reaches 21%, case of sample is 21, only the cubic phase is observed. This graph shows the percentages of existence of the cubic phase in the Yellamette for each sample. The relative amount of the cubic phase with respect to the orthorhombic phase steadily increases with increasing x value. This shows that the addition of iron effectively stabilizes the cubic phase. According to the microstructure study, samples S1 and S2.5 show nanometric microstructures. The small grains are gathered in larger aggregates. However, an increase in grain size is observed for samples S5 and S10 still at the nanoscale. For S21, the microstructure becomes micrometric with larger grains. Densified clusters are observed at this stage. The cubic Yellamette phase is dark gray and the ferritic phase is light gray between the green boundary and surround the Yellamette grains. Our challenge now is synthesis of cubic Yellamette without secondary phases in order to carry out a fine structural analysis. Two strategies currently under study. Modification of centering duration of S21, either to promote the growth of Yellamette grains or to prevent the formation of the ferritic phases. And the second strategy is selective dissolution of ferritic phase by chemical treatments. In the conclusion, the interesting points are the following. The presence of iron favors the formation of elements from a small addition of iron. The total insertion of iron in the crystal lattice of elements is only possible at iron content lower than 2.5% of iron oxide. The increase in iron content is accompanied by the formation of ferritic phase and the stabilization of the cubic polymorph. The electron microscopy allows to observe nanometric grains assembled in larger aggregates. And thank you for your attention.